Gillian Robinson is starting record.
Everyone's. Can you hear Kyla now?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Kyla.
Oh.
Hello, everybody.
Oh, hello, Gillian.
All those happy faces out there.
Come on.
I'm not in the meeting, but
We're in the dining room because it's better service. Gillian.
Hi.
No,
Nice.
don't shine it at me.
Nice to see everybody.
Oh,
okay, just a couple of moments. Can we get everybody, just to start with, could everybody please, at the bottom of your screen, to the left-hand side, you'll see a mic and a video there. That's where you mute your mics.
What we're doing?
If we have everybody on live mic, it sometimes overwhelms the system.
Yeah.
So we've just got some more people joining us.
Oh, no, don't touch. Talking about other people doing it.
And we do have some apologies from some people that were still needing to get to the hairdresser.
Done it, Lynette, done it.
You done? I haven't, clearly.
No, because she's on a Zoom meeting.
Oh. I'll go over and
Okay. How are we going for time, folks? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yep, nod if you can, or thumbs up. Absolutely, great. Welcome aboard, everybody. Rhonda, can we hear you?
Yes, you can.
There we go. Yes, we can. Excellent, excellent. So welcome, everybody. I just thought this was a good opportunity just to get you all together, all HCSL clients. So wonderful to see you all here, and a good opportunity to take advantage of Rhonda's generous agreement to be here just to help talk us through some of the things that are facing us at the moment with the changes of going to level 1 and what that means in relation to our changing visiting protocols that we've got in place. You've all got updated policies and procedures there, and I know that there's a whole raft of factors that influence what people feel comfortable with, and we've all been through a lot. This has been a harrowing time for so many of you in so many different ways. So acknowledging you all for that and coming out the other end, and fingers crossed this is the end. So Rhonda, if I can get you to just respond to a few questions that I've got here that seem to be forefront of mind for a lot of people that they've been asking. So could you give us some guidance on what the NZACA and what you believe is appropriate from a human rights perspective, etc., in relation to visiting at the moment? Are people still taking temperatures? Are they still having to make appointments? What's your general overview on visiting?
All right. So, hi, everybody. Look, from my perspective, and certainly from NZACA's, it's back to normal, all right? So at this point in time, the idea is that we can open up visiting. Children can visit on the sites. The main two things that still must be in place, obviously, are the declarations and tracking and tracing of people that are coming on your site. So you must continue to do that. And adhere to really sound infection control practices, because those really are the two insurance policies, if I call them, to make sure that your sites are safe, all right? But there is now no longer any need for you to have appointments and narrow down your visiting policies, all right? And what's actually happening is that on a number of sites, this still appears throughout the country, and it's causing the Ministry of Health and the DHB literally hour by hour at the moment from some very frustrated family members who are saying, you know, it is back to normal now, and yet I still can't get in and access, you know, my dear family member. So I'm happy to take questions, but I guess the key to this is to make sure that everybody understands it is business as usual. All right.
Thanks, Rhonda. That's great. If there are questions, right at the bottom, you'll see there's a chat box there, or if we're not able to answer everybody's questions in this brief session today, please feel free to email me those questions and we'll get a response back for you. The next question I have here is in relation to management of the fears. Everybody has, as I say, been through, it's almost like a lot of us have got some degree of PTSD. You know, we've been through the earthquakes, we went through the mosque shootings, and the country's been through a lot. And a lot of people have been re-triggered by these fear mechanisms. Can you talk to that, Rhonda?
Yeah, sure. Look, I'm sure everybody's feeling very worried and concerned still, because of course the unknown is, you know, whether or not when the borders open, we'll see a resurgence of this. And so, and I think when we look at Jacinda, she was really clear that we will probably still see some cases potentially come into the country, probably from that means. But currently, as it stands at the moment, there are no active cases in New Zealand. So we can take heart from that. And all those cases that we have had, you know, pretty much there's a huge percentage of them have recovered. So that's a really good result. And I mean, I personally accolade everybody that's been in aged care for the wonderful care they've provided for the residents during this period of time. I mean, I've no doubt staff and management have been particularly stressed over this, but you know, you've done a fabulous job and you've kept it out of your facilities. And, you know, I absolutely applaud you for having managed to do that. It's a big thing. I mean, I know from my own site, even the vigilance that's gone on our site of monitoring our residents and making sure that they're not exposed to anything, and the monitoring of our staff has been huge. And so, you know, the amount of additional work that's gone into doing that has been phenomenal. So, but what I want to do is try and get everybody to think about the fact that we've got to approach this now with the fact that life goes on and we've got to do the right thing and make sure that our residents' lives are not impacted and that they can now resume life as normal.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks for that, Rhonda. Just in relation to managing the expectations of the residents and families, you know, there's been a number of complaints come through over lockdown of family feeling that the rules have been too strict and blaming facilities. There's been a number of sites where there has been some quite direct, aggressive interactions between families and staff on site. So any advice on managing the family expectations as we go forward?
Look, on our own site, we've been sending out newsletters weekly, and I think that that's been a phenomenal success as far as keeping families abreast of what's been going on. We've been having a lot of positive feedback about our communication. And I think that that's one of the key measures to making sure that families are kept well informed about what's going on. And so obviously, yes, you'll get the odd family member who over a period of time does get a little bit aggressive and a bit upset and anxious about their loved one in care. Now, I mean, obviously, we've got to make sure that they get lots of reassurance. And, you know, that's a continuing thing to carry on with, isn't it, really, to make sure that they're feeling, you know, that we're empathising with them, that we're hearing their distress and their anxiety, but also saying to them, look, you know, we've got through this period really well. Your loved one is still good. And just making sure that that communication carries on. In fact, I was actually saying to our manager today, you know, I think the beauty of these newsletters is that because people have been so well informed, we're actually seriously thinking about how more frequently we're going to do them rather than just every quarter. I think it's a really good thing to keep them going for a period of time.
Absolutely. People like communication. If you look on the HDC website into investigations, the common theme of, you know, the majority of investigations is a breakdown in communication. And so that constant and relevant communication is really important, because what people don't know, they tend to make up, and generally they get it wrong. Another question here that's come through, and as we've said, I think we know the answer to this one, but just reaffirming the business as usual. Yes, residents can go out for outings with their families. It says, what about residents requesting to take, relatives requesting to take residents out for lunch? We talked about the travel log, and in your policy it talks about maintaining a travel log so that you know where people are going. As Rhonda said, we still need to do the trace and track should things turn bad. So that is important, but it's important that the residents are able to maintain, the contacts that they have in the community, those activities that they're used to doing, the things that give them enjoyment, something to look forward to. So anything else you'd like to add to that, Rhonda?
No, I mean, obviously the tracking and tracing is really important, because in the event that, suddenly we do get in a case, in, for instance, any particular area, what it does mean, it enables us then to look back on who those people have been in contact with and identify quickly if there's some risk around that, in which instance then you'll obviously go back to your risk matrix and then implement what measures you think are really important. And I think the key to this is around the flexibility, the nimbleness of your organisation, and the respect that if there is a risk, then suddenly you'll think about, okay, do we need to, reintroduce things like temperature testing, mask wearing, etc. So it's, you're going to gauge it by what's happening in your own area and what you feel is important to implement.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it comes back to your risk management at the end of the day, doesn't it? And as you say, looking at what's relevant in your area, what's happening, communicating with others, and acting accordingly, but not overreacting.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I think's really happened over this last 2 or 3 months is, and what's become obvious to me, is it's very easy to go into a lockdown phase and impose a lot of restrictions for safety measures, but the harder part is about coming back out of that and how you come back out of that. And I think that that's potentially where a lot of sites are really struggling. I mean, I've only just been rung by Rebecca from NZACA a few moments ago about a home in Auckland who is still restricting visitors on site and still stopping families from coming in. And she said to me, can I give them a ring? And I'm very happy to do that. But I think the key to this is to recognise, yes, we've just got to let these reins go now, because, life as we know it is back to normal. When we look at the things like Jacinda saying, no need now for social distancing, larger parties can all get together, then that is the key. That's what we've got to follow, those instructions now.
And so that's also the answer to another question that's popped up there in relation to getting declarations signed, contact details recorded, and ensuring hands are sanitised. Are staff at other facilities monitoring this in person as visitors come in, or do you rely on signage and take it on trust? I think, we're at that point where we need to take it on trust. Make sure that you do have the signage there, that you do have the hand sanitizer there, but you can't have a guard at the door as such. That's not reflective of business as usual. Rhonda, any other comments on that?
No, I'd absolutely totally agree with you there, Gillian. You have to put some trust in. I mean, I think what we're finding is that it's mostly our own known family members and their friends that are coming in to access those residents on site. And hopefully by now, certainly in that managed period where we were sort of in level 2, where we were starting to open up the visiting, we were getting these people through, and if I call it indoctrinating them in our infection control processes and the declarations to make sure they do that. Hopefully we've covered, a good 95-98% of those visitors that continue to come back on our site, so that they've already been through that process. And so you're right. I mean, hopefully now with them understanding, the importance of this, that they'll follow that and continue to follow the process each time they come on site.
Absolutely. So with the sign-in registers, it is a case of you having a look at those and making sure that for the best of your ability, people are signing in. And if they're not following up on that, then you might want to send out the reminders in those regular communications and the newsletters and things like that, so that people are just reminded exactly what your expectations of them in line with keeping themselves and the residents safe are. Rhonda, I think, we're all a little bit fearful about what happens when the borders open, and, is that going to create an influx and an increase in numbers and things like that? So can you talk us through the process that's been put in place to manage risk around the borders opening again, please?
Sure. So a number of facilities have actually got into their declaration now. They're asking for people to identify if they're part of airline crew or they're someone that's new back in the country, so that they can identify themselves up and we can get a fairly clear picture of whose relatives they might be. Now, the government has decided now that as soon as people step into the country, they're going to be tested, and then they'll be tested again sometime just prior to coming out of quarantine. So we do know that they'll have 2 COVID tests, all right, and I'm hoping that anyone new back into the country will certainly be picked up in that period of time if they are exhibiting any symptoms. So, you know, it's starting to get a little bit more robust process around that, and of course airline crews are being tested as well. So it's really important that they continue to do that, but that we as aged care facilities are aware of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now let's just have a wee look here. There's no other questions that have popped up at the moment. Reminder again that the chat is at the bottom of your screen. If you've got any other questions, this is a great opportunity to ask them, either of me or of Rhonda while she's here. And of course, if the worst did happen, Rhonda, and we did hear that there was a case come up, what would be the advice? Are we looking at the levels and retreating 1 level, or are we suddenly shooting to level 4? What's the plan?
So I think, you know, 1 or 2 cases coming into the country. I mean, I think it's to be expected. I don't think we should suddenly rush off to go back into level 4. I think it's a matter of finding out where those cases are. I mean, for instance, if you are in somewhere like, let me think, I don't know, Matamata, just as an example, and you find that there's 1 in your community, then it's at that point then as a manager you would think, well, that heightens my risk. And it is about, you know, looking at your visitors on site at that point, and it may well be you choose then to go back into a managed visitor policy, all right, and implement some of the measures that you've already put in place. Somewhere in a larger centre like Christchurch, for instance, you know, again, I think you'd be certainly looking at what you can do to keep your site safe and your staff safe. Because, I mean, obviously that's the major risk, is that people still out in the community may well come in contact with them. So the key to this is obviously looking at the management of your staff and their movements and their infection control practices on the site, along with visitors that come back in. And again, as I say, you may well choose to go back into a measured or managed visitor policy.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you for that. And just reiterating, Malcolm has reminded us about screening for visitors goes beyond just thinking about COVID. You know, think about those other things. You know, are people symptomatic? Does that mean that they've had any illness recently, any signs or symptoms of any of the COVID signs, or influenza? Thinking about, you know, we're into winter season. You wouldn't know it with the temperatures today, but certainly in Christchurch anyway, we've been lucky. But looking at, you know, have people had gastro? Is there somebody in the family that's been sick? You know, once again, those are reminders that you can put in those newsletters of not just narrowing and having a small focus, think a bit more broadly. Are we still taking staff temperatures and declaration? Yes, we're sort of still doing the declaration and the sign-in, but we're not doing the temperatures anymore, are we, Rhonda?
No. I mean, I personally, again, it's around that trust and confidence in your staff and making sure that by now that they fully understand that they mustn't come to work if they're not feeling well. You know, it's key to make sure that staff feel comfortable to ring in and say, look, I'm not well and I won't be there, you know, and obviously for us to follow up on them as well. But that's the key to this, is to make sure that no one that is unwell steps through those doors of your facility.
Yeah. And also in your documentation system, you do have forms there to track staff illness and things like that. So do keep a track, and as Rhonda said, follow up. Most people are going to be absolutely genuine, but we all know that from time to time there's somebody that might decide that this is a good excuse just not to be a team member. So, you know, keep those records so that you can track and see what's happening as well. What else have we got here? I'm just having a quick look at the chat. If staff have mild respiratory symptoms, do they still need to follow the previous guidelines to get a swab taken and then stand down until negative result, for example, 48 hours?
Again, I mean, you look at it and think if they're unwell and they're exhibiting some symptoms, then obviously I would be suggesting to the staff member that they go to the doctor. And I've no doubt the doctor will certainly consider doing that if the symptoms actually fit the criteria of the virus. So, you know, at the end of the day, that would be the way that I would handle that.
Great, thank you. Now, I have to confess that I am a cheapskate, and so this is a 40-minute Zoom, and we're running out of time. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Rhonda, very much for your time and sharing your knowledge with us today. If people want to have more of these Zoom meetings and think this is a valuable thing to do, then please let us know. We're quite keen to do that if that's going to be a value and good use of your time, knowing that you're all very busy. So once again, thank you. If there are any other questions that any of you have, please just email those through and we'll get a response back to you. Any final words there, Rhonda, just before we get cut off?
No, just look, keep up the great work. Again, you know, I'm immensely proud of this sector. I just think we've done a phenomenal job. Well done to you all. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for all taking the time to join us today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.